if we go back, I don't know, 100 years,
Oh boy, history lesson.
maybe a little further. What was the standard form of transportation? Horses. The A to B was horse carriage.
Trains, walking, horses.
So some boy named Henry Ford decided to commercialize affordable vehicles, and then all of a sudden, cars became the new standard. Correct?
Production lines. Yeah.
We had brick phones, then we had flip phones, and as soon as someone got their hands on a touchscreen iPhone, the world's never really been the same.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Typically, we finally get to touch and feel new technology, and the older just fades away. When was the last time you saw someone roll up to a Walmart on a horse?
I can probably say
When was the last time you saw
never
someone use a flip phone?
Well,
that was under the age of 70.
Well, there are some characters that still use flip phones.
Regardless, point is, electric cars. It's the new touchscreen phone.
Okay.
They will be standardized. We look back 80 years from now.
Uh-huh.
I think electric cars will be standardized.
Uh-huh. You would hope.
Are you in disagreement? You want to hash it out?
I don't really think there's anything to hash out there on that debate. In the year 2100, electric cars. I mean, unless we're all gone, unless we all died.
So you agree?
Yes.
Electric cars will be standard,
As far as I know.
as far as you know.
Mm-hmm.
No, why don't people see it?
I don't think people don't see it. They just think that it's not going to happen for another 20, 30 years, so why bother doing it now?
I don't know, man. I have a lot of conversation with people who just refuse to admit that EVs are the future.
I mean, do they not?
They think that it's just, it's haha technology.
Do they?
It's just a joke.
Do they not know that they will, literally have to be the future because of laws? I feel like you should tell them
I
that.
think for the most part, people don't, follow that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I feel like you should tell them that, because that's like a literal
People don't want to be told what they don't think.
Well, they talking to you for whatever reason. I don't know why then, because all you do is tell people stuff they don't want to hear.
How do you convince someone who's in disagreement with EVs? How do you tell them that, hey, this is you rocking a flip phone in the year 2020?
Well, you can't belittle.
You look foolish.
You can't belittle them. I mean, you can eventually belittle them, but you shouldn't start with belittling them. I mean, obviously, you have to know why they don't believe in it or why they don't want it. I mean, as we've said.
Do you think this is normal? Do you think with, horses to cars, this transition also was as long, as tough as, what's the word I'm looking for, people being so against it?
Well, I'm no historian, but I'm sure there was some pushback from the horse people. The big horse carriage was not pleased with Henry Ford. But as we said 1,000 million times, and we'll continue to say 1,000 million times more, a lot of it has to do with education, misinformation, misconceptions. People just don't know, whether it's because they don't want to know or they can't find a reliable source to explain stuff to them. I mean, some people just like gasoline cars. I mean, those are the.
And how long did it take for everyone to start jumping on the smartphone train? It was definitely a few years.
It was longer than that. When the iPhone came out, 2006.
I know a few people who refused to touch touchscreens. People who refuse to learn how to use computers. Now look at our day and age.
Yeah, well, they were silly for that, but I just said you shouldn't belittle them. So, but yeah, no, you have to figure out why people don't want to do it. Like I said, some people they just grew up with gasoline engines. They want to die with gasoline engines, but some people just think that owning an electric car is much more complicated than it actually is. So it's gonna be a while. I'm not gonna lie. It's gonna take many years before.
See, that's where I'm getting at. It feels like this is probably on track to be one of the longest transitions we've had into a what will become a standardized technology. Seems everything else was done within, I don't know, 5 years max.
I don't know. I feel like transitioning to cars from horses took longer than that, but that was a completely different form of transportation. So
Yeah,
it shouldn't
this
take
is
as
more
long.
comparable to people transitioning into the acceptance of having larger phones versus smaller phones.
Yeah, yeah. Horses
Like it's still a car.
horses to cars was big. You know, you got organic to non-organic. Now you got to have actual paved roads, and you know, instead of hay or whatever horses eat, you got to find gasoline. But here it's just like, hey, it's a car, but you charge it. So it shouldn't take that long as it did back in the days to do the
But I think it
switchover.
will. I think this is gonna take years. I
Well, of
think a
course it's going to
decade
take
back,
years.
we'll still be talking about the percentage that's left to collect in the market.
Well, I mean, I feel like 2015 to 2020 wasn't that much of a expanse. Tesla obviously by themselves grew exponentially since that point, but in the rest of the auto world, there wasn't much, I guess, news about electric cars. But the next 5 years, I mean, everyone should be releasing some sort of electric car. It's. I feel like a lot of people still consider that Tesla have the only electric cars.
Hmm.
But as we see every automaker releasing one or a couple electric cars in the hopefully near future, next 2 to 3 years, let's say, it's going to be more prevalent in people's minds, and they'll realize that it's not only just Tesla with electric cars, and the brands they love or know of are also getting into electric cars. So maybe there's something to this electric car thing. Maybe I should give them a chance or read more about them. But it's still very much in the global scheme. Electric cars are still a niche thing.
Who's at fault? Is it the automakers or consumers? Because I know we just discussed this earlier, but Mercedes, for example, has stopped R&D on internal combustion engines. They're solely focusing on the future of battery electric technology in their R&D department. Why hasn't every automaker done that? Why are their automakers still spending money on gasoline engines if, again, this is the next advancement in our technology? Like this is next step.
because it's going to make them more money in the near term. And, it's, you can't force knowledge upon consumers. You can't bust down everyone's door and explain to them why, electric cars, how they work, why you should drive one and whatnot. So, is it partially
Well, hear me
consumers'
out.
fault? I mean, yeah, maybe, because some people
Well, hear
just
me
don't
out.
want.
If I flipped a switch and made every single car at car dealerships electric, I think consumers would be much more intelligent when it comes to EVs than they are now.
Yeah, but you can't trust. You can't trust. Every automaker in the world could come up with a pact, a gentleman's agreement that will only do electric cars, but there's going to be those one or two that just break it, and then they'll have the only gasoline cars. And a lot of people don't want to make the switch yet, so they'll just go to those two companies and buy gasoline cars from them until it's literally illegal to sell gasoline cars. So
How long do you think it's going to take? How long until we can officially call it the new standard? What percent market share would EVs need to have for it to be considered a standard?
I feel like you have to be the majority, no?
In majority in terms of new car sales or cars on the road?
Let's say new car sales.
When do you think that's going to come about?
Oh man, 2030s maybe.
2030s?
I don't have I don't have a lot of I mean, maybe it's me being pessimistic. But I don't have a lot too much faith in everyone's plans here, in regards
But you
to
still have faith in eventually, with time, EVs becoming standard.
yeah. But everyone's grand ambitions by 2025, 2026, 2027 to have like 15, 20 models in each brand being electric. I just don't trust in it. I mean, a large part of it is once again because these plans haven't really been put into motion and I can't see the beginnings of it. I haven't seen the first set of electric models coming from these brands. Uh, you know, but if in 2022 I see, some decent efforts being put in by legacy automakers to push out a decent amount of electric models, then I'll probably be a little bit more optimistic and I'll move that date forward a bit. But right now, it's too soon for me to call to see how much actual energy these automakers are going to put into creating electric cars, and as we've also seen how much effort they're going to put into providing knowledgeable dealers and being able to educate their consumers on how to drive electric cars and how to maintain electric cars and how to own them. So it's as you know, it's a multifaceted problem. There's a lot of hurdles to go over,
You also
and
have the issue of materials, lithium itself.
yeah, lithium too. I mean, we've already seen LG having battery shortages to the point where the I-Pace and the e-tron had to stop production for a week or so, and that's when we only have a handful of electric cars. So, I'm sure every automaker wants to secure their own supply, like Mercedes did, and BMW is planning to do, so they can try and avoid.
Volkswagen's kind of doing.
Yeah, so they can try to avoid relying on some third party to provide the cells for them, because you can't you can't just have like 3 or 4 companies having to provide cells for every single automaker in the world eventually. So,
And there are countries out there where we can arguably already say that EVs are standard.
like Finland, Sweden,
Some of those
Scandinavian
what would
countries.
you call that? Yeah, Scandinavian countries. There's a few of them. What makes them different? Are there regulations in those countries?
Yeah, yeah. But I feel like
Was it forcefully was it a forceful adoption of EVs, or just general being tech forward, economically forward?
I think as general there. I think obviously culture has to play a big part of it. I think the Scandinavian countries are. I'm not gonna call them like tree huggers, but definitely an appreciation for nature is something up there, as far as I know, and they're pretty wealthy. We can't look past that. Obviously, electric cars are still more expensive than their gasoline equivalents. So the more well-off a country is, they're going to be more. It's going to be a higher chance that they'll go for electric cars. So Scandinavian nations are pretty well off, so they are able to afford that lifestyle and buy electric cars. So it's a little bit of both, cultural, how much money each individual has, government incentives. I can't speak on the government incentives, but I'm sure there's something there. So I don't know. There's just so many things to look at. I mean, even in the United States, it's fractured. California is all about green energy, but if you go somewhere in the deep south, I don't think they care as much up there. So I don't know, or do they even care to know about how to drive an electric car or what an electric car even is?
So, someone comes up to you and says, electric cars are big funny. They're the haha. They will never become standard. How do you respond to
Why?
that?
First of all, I don't know who you are to come up to a random dude and be like, "Yo, electric cars suck." Unless they recognize me for me.
Do be those internet comments.
But anytime someone says that, I have to ask why. Why do you think that?
Well,
What's
we
the
have the
reasoning here?
same. If I flip the phrasing around and flip electric cars with hydrogen fuel cell cars, we have the same people saying that.
Yeah, but it's easier to, like, if someone told me in 2013, 2014, electric cars are haha, we're not doing it. There's more credibility at that point. A lot of people
Hmm.
were skeptical about it because at that point it was a Nissan Leaf, a BMW i3, a handful of compliance cars with ranges below 100 miles that make you want to barf, and Tesla with a limited charging infrastructure, and you know all of them, all of the electric cars offered were more expensive than their gasoline competitors. So if someone told me in 2013, 2014, you know electric cars are not going to happen, I'd I wouldn't blame them as much and be like, okay, I mean, I can see it. I can see why you're kind of hesitant towards it. But I feel like if you looked at the progress that's been made over the past half decade and how many stated plans that basically every automaker has at this point, it's not just Tesla anymore. It's not just little startups here and there trying to have an electric niche for themselves. It's every automaker essentially has plans and is planning to roll out cars, roll out infrastructure. I don't know how you can look at all of that and then say, yeah, but it's not going to happen though. Because with hydrogen, it was Toyota, Toyota, um, Toyota, Honda, I think once, Kia or Hyundai once, and Trevor Milton. So, and then some other ones that I don't want to disrespect, but I just don't know. I'm sure there's others. So when you look at that cast, I you know Trevor Milton or the entirety of the auto industry. So I feel like that's why you can put faith in electric cars, but then kind of be hesitant about hydrogen fuel cells in this day and age.
So we're in agreement. Electric cars will be standard, but your backbone for that statement is really regulation,
Well, yeah.
correct?
I mean, it's hard to argue against that.
See, if we go back to the iPhone analogy or the smartphone
Mm-hmm.
analogy, a lot of people said once you use a smartphone, you don't go back to a dumb phone, and that's a very true statement to stand by. It's pretty hard to do so.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to. I don't know if you've tried, but give it a shot.
Dude, even going back a smartphone 3 years ago is hard. I can't
it's
imagine
it's
going.
horrible. So, I think that even without regulation, I mean, surely it might take a little longer, but I think even without regulations, EVs will be standardized because, as we know, it's not just the environmental impact. Teslas and EVs shine in just about every aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that if we took regulations out of play, would you still agree with the statement that EVs will be standardized?
I think it would have taken longer because I don't think the automakers would have put in these aggressive plans.
Mm-hmm.
Personally,
Interesting. See, no one forced Apple to make a smartphone. No one forced Samsung to follow suit. Why is it that
yeah, but
automakers
it's because
are only doing so
I
with
mean,
regulations?
it's well, the pricing is humongously different. Obviously, everyone can strive for an iPhone. Even if you're making minimum wage, you can strive for an iPhone. The market there is huge, but not everyone can strive for even just a car.
Mm-hmm.
So it's there's you have a better opportunity for the majority to get into a phone rather than the majority to get into a car. And then I mean it's harder to show off a car, right? I mean, you can show off an iPhone anywhere. You can pull out your iPhone at the movies, in class, wherever. It's kind of hard to show off your car, especially show off your car without looking kind of like a prick. You know, so I think the difference in price definitely has a big is a big differentiator between those two situations. But what would be interesting to see is how many people who bought an electric car went back to a gasoline car for the next as their next car purchase. That would be very interesting to see if it does mirror the adoption of smartphones and how many people went back to just a regular flip phone after using an iPhone. Is it more or less than that?
I think it's easier to do, but it's something you have to acknowledge that you're really taking a step backwards. It's not an equal change. I mean, just driving an electric car versus a gasoline car isn't in terms of a daily driver, not a Tesla versus a Ferrari. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just so much better to drive. It's so much more comfortable. It's like flip phone versus smartphone. Who do you think is which automaker's the BlackBerry in this analogy?
The BlackBerry. Man.
Who's refusing to move?
I mean,
or refusing to move at a fast enough pace?
I said in the last episode, that's Fiat Chrysler. And Ferrari. Well, I mean, Ferrari is under FCA anyway, so I guess it still falls on. But even though everyone knew what a BlackBerry was, I don't think
one of the most popular phones at the time. It might have been the most popular phone for a while.
But for some reason, Ferrari still holds more brand prestige in that, because people who know nothing about a cars can even wear like a Ferrari shirt around, and they'll be like, that's cool. No one's really rocking a BlackBerry hat or something like that unless they were super into it. So in that analogy, I guess Ferrari, but I think Ferrari has built up so much prestige and brand loyalty that they can get away with anything. But Fiat and Chrysler, no. There's no one. They don't have that brand prestige, and they are not even moving. I'm not even saying they're dragging their feet. The feet are frozen. They're not moving. But are we saying BlackBerry in terms of they're just not doing anything, or they're vocal against the change?
Well, I don't know if BlackBerry was ever vocal.
Yeah,
I don't
same.
have the history of BlackBerry on me.
Mm-hmm.
So just in terms of not progressing in that direction, because BlackBerries did progress. Don't forget that. They did continue making new BlackBerries. I think they still do, right?
No, I think they finally stopped. But they had a couple touchscreen ones, yeah.
Their sales and their prestige, like you said, just gradually reduced because they weren't keeping up with the competitors, because they were stuck on the whole big keyboard thing, and then when they did finally decide to make the change, it was too late.
Yeah, and they had their own operating system that wasn't...
Yeah, because like you said, BlackBerry did eventually make a touchscreen phone. Mm-hmm. They eventually did make something that was comparable. But at that point, it was too late. No one cared.
Yeah, so I'd say either Fiat, Chrysler, and basically any Japanese automaker, Sans, Nissan, is they got some BlackBerry vibes right now. But like I said, there's still time. This isn't. I don't want to say this is 2006. The iPhone just launched.
I don't know.
And
Tesla's
everyone has to do it.
This is the iPhone. this is we are in 2000s. We're past it. The Model 3 is on the road. They've sold over 1 million cars. And how long did it take Apple to sell 1 million iPhones?
Once again, that's a pretty not fair comparison. Orders of magnitude difference in price, bro. Who do you think is the BlackBerry of the car world?
I think as of today,
mm-hmm.
Tesla has much more brand prestige than Apple did in 2006. Much more. I don't even think it comes close. I'd argue Tesla's one of the strongest brands in terms of recognition today.
Yeah. So
to see some of these automakers just like not acknowledge that and realize the path forward is kind of foolish to me. Who do I think the BlackBerry is? Yeah, you're probably right with Fiat Chrysler. I mean, I don't have a vendetta against any of them like you do.
I don't have a I only beef with Toyota.
But I do think it won't be one. I think that there's, in the BlackBerry story, there really was only one BlackBerry. I'm sure there was others. I know there was others, but
Nokia.
No one had the prestige that BlackBerry did. BlackBerry was in a league of its own for the time. I mean, who were they to compare with? It's the Sidekick.
Yeah.
And here, when we try to compare this to auto sales, there's just so many automakers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there'll be just one. I think there'll
Yeah.
be one plus more.
It's gonna be.
I think for sure we'll see one.
It's gonna be BlackBerry tier in the in the history books.